Hi everyone, Rough the Night Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new album from Blanck Mass. Animated Violence Mild. That is an example of how quickly my brain is moving right now. Let's see how this review goes. As I said, album from Blanck Mass, the latest one. If you did not know, Blanck Mass is the musical project of electronic music producer Benjamin John Power, a name I never get tired of saying. He is also known as one half of the electronic and experimental music duo Fuck Buttons. But over the past decade or so, he's been doing a great job of building more interest in the Blanck Mass name, now with multiple quality albums being released through Sacred Bones Records. 2017's World Eater was not only a very good album, but Blanck Mass's best so far, and I essentially went into Animated Violence Mild hoping he'd craft an even better project. Because there's something about his fusions of rave-centric electronic dance music, noise, and industrial aesthetics that are not only good in and of themselves, but feel like they're on the verge of something groundbreaking. The record starts off well enough with a short intro and the absolute rager death drop. As expected, it sounds like the dystopian soundtrack to an all-out slugfest happening at an underground dance club run by a bunch of goths who own an abandoned factory. The pounding percussion, the thick, heavy walls of screaming, burning, bright synthesizers and leads. It's all pretty thrilling, and I love that Power is taking the time to add little rhythmic nuances throughout the track so that the progressions don't turn stale, which is an issue I've had with past Blanck Mass works, past Fuck Buttons works. The added builds and rhythmic change-ups and also screamed vocals at a few points on the track are greatly appreciated. The track also goes on for a very generous 7 minutes, and yet it doesn't really feel like it. As once this thing started, I felt like I was just locked into this very intense fireworks show. The song House vs. House starts off in a somewhat more lighthearted fashion with these jittery beats and vocal samples that are just hip-driving. It kind of feels like the start of a Diplo-type banger. But Power drives this track into a very different direction with these grand, epic chord progressions swelling in the background. Suddenly, this incredibly bright, burning synth lead just slices through all of this sonic chaos that Power has drummed up so far. The melody has this really righteous tone to it that feels like it's straight out of this anime about a young protagonist who lives in a world of fantastical creatures and one day discovers that they have magic powers. I also love the ghostly lead vocals that pop up at a few points on this track too. Next, we have the song Hush Money, which too sounds like an abrasive blend of noise and glistening electronic dance music. But the way it's paced, it sounds like the opening theme to an obscure 2D Japanese space shooter for the SNES, where all these enemy ships and lasers are flying at you from every direction. The track mostly functions off of two major parts though, and I wish it just had a bit more variation across its length. Love is a Parasite though I had a difficult time getting into. It was slightly a disappointment given this is one of the bigger tracks on the entire record, but the song features this awful chord progression that just feels like a migraine left over from the post-grunge era of all things, and hearing it in this slightly different aesthetic and context doesn't really make it any more appealing. Thankfully, there's a much better second half where Benjamin breaks into a totally different musical passage, but then brings it back to that original chord progression at the finish where it doesn't sound too awful, but just generally not too crazy about the composition of this one. Dun dun, dun dun, dun dun. Dun dun. I can't quite tell which it is, but no dice grooves like either an old school hip hop song or an old school synth pop song. Either way, the bright rush of synths that pop up all over this track are fantastic, some of the best on the record. And even though aesthetically it's not too different from a lot of the other songs here, this switch up in rhythmic delivery is enough to make this track feel refreshing. The final cut on the record, Wings of Hate, is another screaming, bricked out synth wall of distortion and noise. It's just so heavy, it's so blaring, it's in your face. It feels a lot like the opening track, and I think it's pretty fitting that we have an ending and a beginning to this record that are both equally gargantuan. I just wish the final moments didn't just fade out into oblivion so abruptly. Not a bad album, once again, from Blanck Mass. It didn't blow me away because there were a few lulls at the midpoint of the record, a few songs that I felt like could have done more, and there are so few tracks on the album to begin with. It's a sizable record in terms of length, but there are too few songs here for not every track to be amazing. But I would say this one is at least as good as the last Blanck Mass record. If you loved that record, you're most likely going to love this one. I thought that last one was pretty good, and I think this one too is pretty good. Maybe the next one will kind of push it over that edge and I'll really love it and I'll be blown away. But for now, I'm pretty satisfied with how enjoyable this is. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 7 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Blanck Mass, forever.